banks that have not been managed very well. We need to not only fire them, we have to change their incentive structure. And it's not just the level of pay, it's the form of the pay. Their incentive structures encourage excessive risk-taking, short-sighted behavior, and in a way, it's a vindication of economic theory. They behaved in the irresponsible way that their incentive structures would have led them to behave.
Explain that.
Well, if you get an incentive structure where you say you get huge pay if things go well, but you don't pay any consequences if things go badly, and you're going to look at it only in terms of the profits that you make this year, not the losses that you make next year and the year after, then of course you're going to try to get a gamble. Because if you gamble and you win, you walk off with the money. If you lose, somebody else picks up the losses. So what happened was the banks gambled. They gambled very big. They had big profits for 4 years. But in the 5th year, the losses were greater than all the profits that they had in the first 4 years. But meanwhile, they walk off with the bonuses based on the 4-year performance, and in the 5th year they don't. I mean, it was quite remarkable. They even got big bonuses for the record losses. Then that's what, of course, has gotten Americans angry. So that the bonuses were described as incentive pay, but that was all a charade. But the basic thing is, our bankers are, many of them, not all of them, are, you might say, ethically challenged. But even were not that they ethically challenged, the fact is they had incentive structures that led them to behave in the way they did. Should
the banks be nationalized?
Many of the banks clearly should be put into you might say conservatorship. Americans don't like to use the word nationalization. We do it all the time. We do it every week.
Explain.
Well, if banks don't have enough capital so that they can meet the commitments they've made to the depositors, at the end of every week, the FDIC looks at the balance sheet and it says, you don't have enough capital. You're not allowed to continue. And then what they do is they either find some other bank to take it over and fill in the hole, or they take it into government control. It sounds terrible. To take it into government control and then sell it. And that's what other countries have done when they face this kind of problem, the countries that have done it well. One of the important lessons is this is the kind of thing that can be done well, it can be done badly. And the countries that have done badly have wound up paying to restructure the bank 20, 30, 40%, even 50% of GDP. We're on our way to that kind of debacle, but that shows you how bad things can be, how costly it can be if you don't do it well.
We're talking to Joe Stiglitz. He won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2001, professor of Columbia University, former chief economist at the World Bank. We'll be back with him in a minute.
Chilly winds don't blow, honey, baby. Going where chilly winds don't blow. Well, I'm going to my lonesome home, way down in jail, on my knees, honey, baby, way down in jail, on my knees, where they feed me on corn.
Liz Wright singing Chilly Winds. Yes, she was singing it during President Obama's kind of State of the Union address, but she was here in New York at Riverside Church as thousands gathered to remember the great blues and folk singer Odetta. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. Joe Stiglitz, our guest. He's the Nobel Prize-winning economist from Columbia University and co-author of The $3 Trillion War, The True Cost of the Iraq Conflict. So you're saying small and big banks are being treated differently?
Very much so. The small banks we shut down. The big banks, Citibank, Bank of America, we're giving huge bailouts. Most interesting case is actually AIG, not even a bank. And we poured in $150 billion. Originally, they said that they only needed $20 billion. And then every few hours, every few days, the losses got bigger. The announcement about another $60 billion. Now, that fact, the fact that we keep getting bad news and have to pour money in, should make us really worried. The question is, why do we bail out AIG? What they said is, the reason we bailed it out is if we didn't bail it out, there would be consequences somewhere else. They didn't tell us where. It would make much more sense if we looked at where the consequences were and deal with the problems as they turn out. For instance, some of the, quote, insurance policy, credit derivatives, were not in the United States. The people that would have problems, maybe gamblers, maybe other institutions abroad. Do American taxpayers want to be bailing out institutions abroad? That's a question we ought to be debating. There may be pension funds that may be hurt. Well, some of the pension funds may be able to withstand it. Other pension funds will need to have assistance. But let's get the money going to where we think it ought to go rather than this trickle-down approach that we've been using with AIG.
Very quickly, which countries do you think did things well and which didn't?
Well, Sweden and Norway did things very well back in the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. The UK, I think, has been doing it much better than the United States. Its problems are bigger. We ought to have to realize that because its banking sector was a more important part of the economy, and one of the banks actually had liabilities greater than the GDP of the UK. So it's going to be facing a very difficult time. But the fact of the matter is the way Gordon Brown did it, replacing the heads of the banks, there was real sense of accountability there. Government got control and shares commensurate with the money that was paying in. It wasn't a giveaway. And now trying to make sure that they start lending forward-looking. So it's clear they have a much clearer concept of what is needed.
Why is Obama saving these bankers?
Well, we could all guess but the politics. We know one of the problems about American politics is the role of campaign contributions, and that's plagued every one of our major problems. Under the Bush administration, we couldn't deal with a large number of problems like the oil industry, like the pharmaceutical, the healthcare, because of the influence of campaign contributions. Now, my view is one of the problems is that whether it's because of that or not, it lends an aura of suspicion. The fact that there was so much campaign contributions from the financial sector at least raises the concern. Now, there's one other legitimate concern, that the Wall Street has done a very good job of fear-mongering. They say, if you don't save us, the whole system will go down. But, you know, when these banks that I talked about before, when they go down, there's not even a ripple. The fact is, you change ownership. It happens on airlines all the time. An airline goes bankrupt, new ownership, financial reorganization, not a big deal. What they've succeeded in doing is instilling a sense of fear so that it's a kind of paralysis that hangs over what we're doing. And you can understand a politician. He's been told if you do one thing, the whole system, the sky is falling, it's going to fall. That induces political leaders to try to do the smallest incremental step. And that's what got Japan in trouble.
And your thoughts on Geithner and Summers, can they handle this? What do you think of them as the economics team?
Well, the question is, are they willing to take the bold measures that are necessary? Everybody keeps saying we need to take bold measures. Inaction is not a possibility. That's not the issue on the table. Action will be taken. The question is which action. Is the action pouring more money into the banks without any effect on lending, increasing the deficit, which the president talked about, or the actions which could be taken, starting a new banks, looking forward rather than looking at the past, significant financial restructuring? Are we going to bail out the shareholders, bail out the bankers, rather than focusing on saving the systemically important parts of these institutions? There are some important parts of these institutions that we'll have to save. The question is, are you going to go do it like with a bludgeon, throw money at it, or are you going to try to do it more surgically and save the parts that need to be